Hello, Andy. It is so lovely to see you today. And hello, Martin. What an exciting opportunity that we get to have our co-host on the show for the first time. Andy, thank you again for being the first guest on this new season of the Life Skills 101 podcast. We're going to get the questions kicked off with Martin.
Yeah. So Andy, I want to throw up some warm-up questions for you.
All right.
First thing is, what you have for breakfast this morning?
What did I have for breakfast this
Yeah.
morning? I have a smoothie every single day for
Smoothie.
breakfast.
Okay, with like what in it?
It has like 13 ingredients.
Okay.
It is, yeah. It's like I get all my nutrition out of the way for breakfast, so I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the day.
That's good.
It's got green things, it's got fruits, it's got everything you could need.
I've heard rumors there's bee pollen in there.
There's bee pollen in there
That's
for sure.
questionable, but you know what? We'll take it.
No, thank you for giving me the platform to talk about smoothies. It's something I really believe in.
Oh, well, listen, I'm here for that. My next question for you is, when you were studying at Carleton, did you have like a favorite spot to go to campus?
I mean, Roosters. It's got to be Roosters.
Really?
The Bagel Witch at Roosters. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go there for studying or just to eat the food or hang out. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. No, Roosters is definitely a sponsor of the SES, not officially actually, but
Well, it's a very special place in my
yes,
heart.
yes, fair enough. We brought you on here to talk about getting involved on campus. So most of our questions here are going to theme around that sort of central idea. And my first one for you is, for any new students who are kind of stuck in terms of trying to find a spot to get involved or a club or whatever, do you have any sort of advice for where to start? Where should students first look to get involved?
Yeah, for sure. So it might sound counterintuitive, but I think actually they should look inward first.
Okay.
Rather than immediately looking to see what all is out there. First, take some time to actually think about what you might want to do, because there are a million clubs, extracurriculars, activities, jobs, everything you could possibly want to do and more on campus. So it's sort of a question of figuring out what might actually interest you. And that's not to say you shouldn't step out of your comfort zone and try something you never thought of before, but I think it's worth spending some time figuring out where your interests might lie, what you might feel into trying that you haven't before, something along those lines. And then from there, you can start looking at the many resources that are available. And my favorite way to actually look and see what all is out there is Expo during orientation week, going through all the booths with all the different clubs and societies and everything like that. It can be kind of like carnival-esque with how much there is, but at the end, maybe you'll have had some cool conversations and met somebody from a club or gotten some good literature on something that really interests you.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, no, definitely some good advice there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Expo, you're totally right. What a great place to find things to get involved with, but is a zoo, like you said. That's the perfect word. It can be really overwhelming, but you got to take advantage of it. You can get a lot of like cool free things there too. The amount of stickers that I collected my first year. The next question that we have is, if a new student thinks they'll be too busy to get involved, what advice might you be able to offer them to balance their academics, work life, social life with extracurricular involvement?
Yeah, that's definitely something I would speak to, because I did a whole bunch of things during my time at Carleton, which is a blast, but I definitely burnt myself out sometimes because I was trying to do way too many things at once, double booking, overscheduling, everything like that. So I would say this is kind of a twofold approach. On one hand, I think like just learning time management is really key just to survive in school in general. I'm a big fan of time blocking, where you like block out what you're going to do with your day, kind of, so you make sure you have 2 hours for studying and an hour for socializing, make sure you're actually going to eat lunch. And then you can just sort of immerse yourself in that and not worry too much about if you've got time to make the social commitment and work and school and food and everything, because you'll have planned it out in the morning when you're your best self. But I think the other approach to that is also really actually respecting the like basics. So sleep and food. You're actually going to have less energy and less interest in doing things if you don't get enough sleep, Martin, or anybody. I think it's like really important to actually, look after your body, because that'll give you the energy to do a little bit more. It might feel like you have more hours in the day if you cut out your sleep and stuff, but you're not going to enjoy them quite as much.
It's sort of relating to that. For someone who does end up being too busy, like just with their school and work-life balance, and find that they can't really get involved with traditional extracurriculars, do you have any sort of advice for like, maybe one-offs or like almost seasonal involvement that they can do to at least try to get involved in the community a bit more?
Yeah. I mean, a week, orientation
Of
week,
course, yeah.
is a great way to start the year off on a bang and meet a lot of cool people, do a lot of cool stuff. And it's like your first week before school ideally is getting very stressful or getting very hectic. So you can just sort of enjoy it. And again, it's a great resource for learning a lot about all that goes on campus. So if something really strikes a chord with you during O week, maybe you'll make the time for it later in the semester if you do get the chance. So that's a great one. And summer activities, if you are staying in town, or I think they're even probably offered virtually when things are a little bit lighter, if you're not taking summer courses. I would also say if you can find a way to sort of get intersections between things, like make socializing and studying overlap. I have some of my fondest memories are, studying with friends in the library because you're getting in the good social time, but you're also working on the academics. So
well, two birds with one stone approach.
Exactly.
I like it.
I just have a little bit of a question about O week. So I never did O week after my first year. What made you decide that you wanted to get more involved the following years? Like some people just don't continue to get involved with O week and they just go to school and they kind of forget that there's that whole beginning part. Why did you continue it?
Yeah, well, I think it probably stemmed from just getting involved in other areas of student life, like being very involved with the Student Experience Office, which as a recommendation to any students, I'm not sponsored, I'm a guest, but the SEO is where it's at. Like there's so many cool programs there.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. And so many great people working there as well. So I think getting involved in that community, and it is a community of people who are kind of actively involved. You see the same faces a lot of places. Getting involved with that group led me to check out more of their offerings beyond just the kind of year-round things like campus to community or campus activity board. And O Week in particular, the excitement. I kind of felt this every start of the semester because it would also be the same time that clubs are out tabling in the UC and the sororities are in Torrey Junction and everything. There's just this like really powerful energy going around campus. And O Week is the epitome of that. You have people who are working these crazy long days who by all accounts should be totally exhausted, but they're dancing. They're always dancing. And it's just such a great energy booster to be a part of it. So I think if you came in as a student and maybe during a week you were a little like overwhelmed, maybe you just came from somewhere far away, or I don't know, starting university is overwhelming.
Sure.
And it all seemed like a lot. I think coming back to it in later years can be a very fun way to like take part in that festivity and pass some of your newfound confidence, ideally, on to the new incoming students.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And like, I think a lot of upper year students who do come back really appreciate that energy because it, like, I don't know, as a fourth year student going into fifth year now, like I can speak to the fact that, getting through those last final years, it can get, maybe a bit overwhelming. Maybe you sort of start to lose sight of that school spirit, and then being able to come back in this entirely new environment where you set energy, like the energy is off the charts. We have Ange Frost chants going the whole week. I don't know how their voices keep
People
up with
are
that.
purple all
Exactly.
over the place.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point for upper year students to get involved in that aspect too. So
Yeah, I actually, because like we kind of lost some of that with the upper year students over the last few years. Like we couldn't have the same kind of O week experience. So I'm hoping that hopefully anybody who's listening to this will be able to get more involved with O week their next following years, because it is just a once in a lifetime thing that you can do.
You should do it, Becca.
yeah, you should.
I'm done now. I can't go back anymore unless I keep PhD next, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
there you go.
There's your motivation.
oh my gosh.
PhD, so you can participate in Fallout.
Oh my God. I wonder if there's any PhD students that have participated in Follow. Now I'm curious.
That would be impressive.
That would be so impressive. Yeah. So how have you been able to practice getting involved in this is like very good to what we've just been talking about, but how have you been able to practice getting involved in your years post-graduation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if anything, I think I've scaled back a little bit and tried to kind of like what I was talking about earlier, like try to really direct my energy to what I'm really interested in. I sort of cast the wide net while I had the opportunity in school, and very grateful for that. But now as I'm, working a full-time job and things like that, trying to really devote my time to what I'm really, really passionate about. I will say, though, it's actually my involvement at Carleton that led me to what I'm doing right now for work. because I worked in the Department of University Advancement here at Carleton, which again, shameless plug, like really great department and totally unheard of. You should look into it if you don't know it. There's a lot of cool student roles there, and I worked there as a student caller. So I was one of the people on the phone being like, "Hello, would you like to donate to Carleton?" And then from there, I worked on their Student Philanthropy Association team. So running some cool philanthropic campaigns to support stuff at the university. And that actually led me to working in development in my postgrad at the Ottawa Art Gallery. So it was entirely because of that work that I do the work that I do now. So I've continued the traditions that I started at Carleton, just in the big wide world now.
Nice. Well, you mentioned sort of like peeling back how much involvement you were doing. I assume there was a particular reason for that. Like, were you maybe feeling a bit burnt out about your involvement during school?
Yeah, well, I definitely was. I really was at the point where I was doing too much. It can happen. And that led me to just like make a whole bunch of mistakes and not prioritize my well-being or other people's well-being. It was just do. So trying to actually take some time and focus on, like I said, the basics like sleeping, eating, time for myself actually helped me get a lot more out of the things that I do as I've scaled back. Like theater was something I did a lot of in university, and I loved it. It's a blast. Yet another shameless plug. There's a great theater company on campus, Sock and Buskin. And a lot of the time when I was doing that, it was like running from one thing to the next, working these long nights kind of on school and then also rehearsal. And I wasn't getting as much out of it as I would have liked. So the fact now that I've been able to scale back means when I do like an artistic project or something like that, I can really actually enjoy it fully and not be running off somewhere else right after.
You sent us the list of all of the clubs, activities, societies that you could remember that you were involved with. I think there were like 20 something things on there. I don't know how you crammed all that into like four years of school. You did
5 years of school.
5 years. Like that. I don't know how you did that. That's so impressive.
Yeah, again, I would caution that it wasn't always the best for me, but I really came to university wanting to just like fill my cup as much as possible and do as much as I could. And I'd imagine there are other people in the same boat. So I would say, go for it. I don't want to, again, warn you off of not chasing all the opportunities there are here, because honestly, on campus, when everything is like within 15 minutes of walking distance and all your friends are here and you all have like unlimited energy, it sometimes feels like, it is really worth checking it all out. But just remember to look after yourself too.
For sure. And like that is a bit of a learning experience of what you can actually take on, how to budget your mental resources, I guess, and being involved in all that and school and maybe working on the side.
That's a great way to put it. And I'll also say, a lot of them I was only able to work with for a little while before I had to be like, I'm so sorry, I don't have the time commitment for this.
Completely fair. So that kind of stems into my next question, which was, what do you do as a student who feels that they've taken on too much, when they've gotten involved in too many things, maybe have too many responsibilities now? Do you have any advice for how to manage that or plan accordingly?
Yeah, well, I think honestly, stepping back is the best way to do it. What I just said, sorry, I've taken on too much. I would say, apologize to the people if you're letting anybody down. Because again, if you take on too much, it's easy to accidentally harm relationships with people. So just say, honestly, I'm so sorry, I took on too much of a commitment. They're always going to understand. People will totally understand. And step back and again, try and focus on what you think are like the priorities. Maybe if you feel like you've taken on too much, because it happens to the best of us, or if it's just like exam week and you're not like wanting to ditch everything in your life, but you don't have time to do anything other than finals right now, I would say maybe just make a list of all you've got and say, okay, what can I actually fit into this week? What can I maybe ask to be rescheduled? What am I maybe going to have to let go for now? That sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think the key point is just to make sure that whoever you are, have responsibilities with, they know your situation, make sure that they're in the loop. And a lot of the staff here, they're really accommodating with just making sure that their students aren't overwhelmed, and they want to make sure that you're having the best university experience you can, right?
That's so true. That's part of why I was working 3 jobs at any given time on campus, was because campus employers are the most understanding when it comes to student needs. Like the SEO, the Department of Advancement, they would all totally understand if I was completely swamped with assignments and needed to move deadlines around. So if you can do that, highly recommend looking for employment on campus.
Very good advice there. Okay, so this one's sort of my favorite question of the bunch here. But in this sort of journey that we all have in university of finding our identity, how do you feel about self-identity kind of playing into what you get involved in, and sort of vice versa, how it can shape who you are and what your identity is?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think, like you said, it's kind of a back and forth flow, because I think if you are intentional, I mean, either way, your identity is going to shape what you do. Who you are is going to shape what you're drawn to and what you're going to get involved with. But I think, at least speaking for myself, but I think also speaking for others, a lot of people come into university with a very malleable identity that hasn't fully formed quite yet. I came in very much with no real sense of self, but knowing that I wanted to try out a lot of different things and also wanting to be liked by people. And again, that kind of contributes to that malleable sense of identity, or not, I guess, not having a lot of confidence coming from within. So that can lead to the burnout that we've been talking about. That can lead to taking on too many commitments and not wanting to let anybody down and doing a whole million things. But if you kind of take the time to get in touch with yourself and do that kind of work that I mentioned right at the beginning, of just sort of figuring out what you're really going to be drawn to and what you think could have a meaningful impact, that will be a very fruitful way to like build that identity. I'm also not saying that you need to have that figured out, because it's an ever-changing process.
Absolutely.
But I think if you're in touch with your identity, it can help you spend your time a little better. On the flip side, I think there are activities that you can try that might be totally scary and totally feel like something you're not ready for. But if you give it a try, it can actually also do the same thing. Like what I said, I did a lot of theater around campus, and I had a lot of insecurities relating to myself, and just generally, I'd say insecurity around my image and my personality. So my whole being. And theater helped me get out of that shell a little and get a little bit more confident in front of people, and a little bit more confident ultimately just from within, because I had these sort of foundational experiences that I hadn't had before. So again, I would say take your time to figure out a little bit of who you are, maybe through journaling or meditation. That's quite how I like to do it. But also don't be afraid to jump headfirst before you figure all that out, because it's always going to be changing, and you might actually grow through that not knowing and through that exploration.
For sure. Yeah. And like jumping headfirst into clubs that maybe you don't know so much about, like from anecdotally, I'll say that like I was surrounded by people who I found I really resonated with. Like I joined the Carleton Esports Club, and like those are my people now, right? And that can definitely be a really good way of finding that identity. Is you're with people who are very similar to you.
Yeah.
Once you do that, it becomes a lot easier, I find, too, to actually do those time commitments and responsibilities. So
that's so true. I think the greatest thing you can get out of any involvement is lifelong friends.
For sure. For sure.
Can't remember if we ever talked about this, but what did you study at Carleton when you were here?
Right. Yeah, that'd be a great thing to talk about, because I studied the Global and International Studies degree, BEGINS, as it's known. But I bounced around kind of within that program a fair amount. And I always recommend to people, like, switch your program if you want to, because I switched my specialization within the program twice in my time here. And I know there's like some people that are afraid of doing that. There's like concern that it will, I don't know, that it'll mean something that, I don't know, that they'll have to start fresh over again, anything like that. But I would say if you're not jiving with what you're doing, but you could change and feel a little more interested in your studies, absolutely do so. I switched my specialization and my GPA went up like 1.5 points just because it stopped counting like the econ courses that I was bad at. So yeah, highly recommend.
That's awesome. I'm so glad. It's actually, I find it not as common to find people who say, don't switch if you don't like your thing, like stick with it. Not that many people actually feel that way. Like if you don't like it, don't do it any longer kind of thing. But I'm glad that you were able to bounce around in between, because BEGINS is like, wasn't it a pretty new program too?
I was in the second year of its existence ever. Yeah, but BEGINS is a pretty broad, like we had like 17 specializations, at least at that time. I don't know if that's still the case. Like my roommate was one of 2 people in, I think, one of the specializations.
Very personalized experience.
Very much so, yeah. But that also was great, because it meant I could try out some of the other courses and ultimately find which one really worked for me. And I totally did. I loved my program after making the 3rd switch.
That's good. It's good. Finding what you love is all about what university is,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, absolutely.
for sure. So speaking as someone who is also featured around Carleton,
Featured around
yeah,
Carleton.
we'll put it lightly like that. How would you describe, the reaction you had when you saw your face plastered on the bookstore for the first time ever? Like, did you know that that was going to happen, or like?
I don't think any of us knew it was going to be that big.
Okay.
But we were thrilled, obviously, because it's pretty fun. But I think we just sort of were like, oh, this is great, and then went on our way. But then, like, very shortly after, during one of the orientation sessions, one of the students kind of like came up to me and were like, oh, from the bookstore, and just that. And that was when I was like, oh, this is gonna follow me, isn't it? But I love it. It's so sweet. I sometimes will get friends who are visiting campus, like taking a picture with it and stuff, as
Yeah.
I know you've experienced too.
Yes. I felt my own fair share of that. And like, I guess coming back, after it's been a few years since you graduated, right?
Yeah.
Still seeing it there. Like,
Yeah.
it's nice that you're still a piece of Carleton.
Yeah, it feels like, I put a whole lot of hours in my time here. So it's lovely to see that the universe has taken that and immortalized me on a wall here. Well, I don't know about immortalized.
Well,
I'm kind of still shocked that it's there every time.
Yeah.
As immortal as vinyl gets, I guess.
Well, thanks for coming on to the show, Andy. It's been really lovely speaking with you. Thank you for using your time to come speak to all these lovely students here who are now going to be getting involved on campus and hopefully not taking on too much.
Yeah, so that's right. No, thank you very much for having me. It was a total delight.
Thank you.
Bye.